From genius moments, which creates unbelievable victories, on the other side of the coin, painful losses, sometimes ugly scenes, and not forgetting controversy, all wrapped into something we'd call unforgettable memories. Here is the history of the World Cup, one of the most popular events of the world, brought to you by Brian Werimo. So, I take you back to 1928, and this is following the conclusion of the Olympics that had happened that year. If there's anyone to thank for these amazing tournaments that we get glued to the TV every time, is one and only Jules Rimet, because he was the FIFA president at the time, and football having done well in the Olympics of 1928, he decided, or he suggested, that we should have a separate tournament called the World Cup, where the winner will officially be the world champion in as far as football is concerned. And so, 2 years later, after his idea, we were set for the first ever tournament, which happened in 1930, and the hosts were Uruguay. Since Uruguay had won the 1928 Olympics football event, then they had the right to host the first ever tournament. This tournament was actually very interesting because it is the only tournament where participants were actually invited to participate. So there was no qualification involved. All the nations that were under FIFA at the time were invited for this event. And due to logistic issues, not many countries managed to get over all the way to Uruguay to be able to take part in the first ever FIFA World Cup tournament. Egypt were invited, but due to delays of their ship, due to bad weather, they actually missed this tournament, amongst other countries that could not travel to go all the way to Uruguay to be part of the first ever FIFA World Cup tournament. Now, it means that only 13 teams actually turned up for this tournament, and on 13th of July 1930, we were set off. The format in which this tournament was played was as straightforward as it could get, because all the 13 teams were grouped into 4 groups, each group having 3 teams and one group having 4 teams. And there, our first game of this tournament was actually France vs Mexico. And in 19th minute, Lucien Laurent scored the first ever World Cup goal and gave France the lead. France would go on and win this game 4-1, but it wasn't enough. Uruguay actually topped their group to be the first semi-finalists of that tournament, followed by Yugoslavia in another group, Argentina in another, and USA in another. The semi-finals of this tournament featured the hosts Uruguay playing Yugoslavia from Europe, while Argentina from South America played USA from North America. Both actually ended 6-1 in favor of Uruguay and Argentina, but it is the details into these semi-finals that will be very shocking and dramatic. The first semi-final featured USA versus Argentina, and this is one of the most brutal semi-finals you'll ever hear about, because in around 10th minute, an Argentine broke an American's leg by a bad tackle. This led to a confusion, and an enraged physiotherapist, who's American going to treat his player, tripped himself and also knocked himself out. A brawl broke out, and during this brawl, an Argentine knocked another American player, making him lose his teeth. But the game had to continue, and to surprise, no one was actually sent off. This meant that USA would play with less men, and that could be the reason why they lost 6-1. In the end, Uruguay, the hosts, played Argentina in the final. In the final, there are also other disputes. Argentina wanted to use their own ball, which was a bit lighter and fast, while Uruguay wanted to use their locally made ball, which was heavier. So FIFA decided that in the first half, they would use the Argentine ball, and then in the second half, they would use the Uruguayan ball. In the end, Argentina managed to score 2-1 in the first half. Guillermo Bastil, who ended up being the top scorer of this tournament, also being on the score sheet. But in the second half, there was a turnaround because Uruguay would score 3 other goals, which meant they would actually defeat Argentina 4-2. Amongst Uruguay's scorers was this one-armed man called Hector Castro. Hector Castro actually had made history as well for Uruguay because he scored the first ever World Cup goal for Uruguay in this same tournament against Paraguay. And his story of being one-armed is a sad one, but he beat all odds to make sure that he scored that definitive goal to give Uruguay a 4-2 lead and gave them the first ever World Cup and won the first ever World Cup as well. Uruguay will go on to lift the Jules Rimet Trophy, which is a bit different from what we're used to seeing today. After a successful first ever edition of the World Cup, everyone across the world was excited for the second edition. And now, from South America in Uruguay, we head over to Italy in Europe for the second edition. Now, FIFA actually changed the format because from 13 teams, we now had 16 teams qualifying for the second edition. And this is the format that would actually be used until 1982. However, in between, there will be changes in how the 16 teams will play. But 16 teams were the ones to qualify for those World Cups played in between there. Now, there was low attendance from South American teams in this tournament with reasons that European teams did not attend the first edition of the World Cup held in South America, which meant that only 2 teams from South America, which is Argentina and Brazil, only managed to participate in this World Cup. Uruguay, who were the defending champions, boycotted this World Cup, and this would mean that this was the only time that a champion could not defend their title. Egypt became the first ever African team to qualify and participate in the World Cup. However, they would go on to lose to Hungary in the first round. The quarterfinals of this edition featured only European teams, which means that South American teams including Brazil and Argentina all were knocked out in the first round. In one of the quarterfinals matches, Italy were the host, played Spain in a game that was very brutal. Up to this day, people remember this as the Battle of Florence. Why? Because it featured so much brutality, fights and brawls that left some of the players stretchered off injured, and since there are no substitutions up to that time, then it means once your player is injured, you actually play with less men until the end. The first game ended in a draw, and then they would replay it in the next day because there were no penalties at the time. So Italy on the next day managed to win 1-0 and qualified for the semis. In the semis, they beat Austria 1-0 and headed to the final. In another semi-final, Czechoslovakia played West Germany, won 3-1 and set up a final. The final between Italy and Czechoslovakia featured some history. Luis Monti, who had featured for Argentina in the previous tournament, also featured for Italy in this one, making him the one and only player to represent 2 different nations in 2 different World Cup finals. Well, in the end, Italy could go on and beat Czechoslovakia 2-1. After the game ended 1-1, Italians managed to score in the 95th minute in extra time to lift their first ever World Cup. But under what pressure? Luis Monti was actually quoted saying, in 1930, they were going to kill me if I won. In 1934, they were going to kill me if I lost. In the end, Italy won their first ever World Cup on home soil, and they became the first ever European side to win the World Cup. Now from Italy, let's head over to France for the 3rd edition of the World Cup. And this is happening from Europe to Europe, and many South American countries were not happy with this. So it meant that most of them, or all of them, including Uruguay again and Argentina, actually boycotted this World Cup. This meant that only Brazil from South America and Cuba from the Caribbean, which actually took advantage with other teams boycotting, to be part of this edition. Alongside them from another continent will be Indonesia to join the other European teams to make the 16 teams that will play in this edition. Now the format is still the same as 1934 because it would feature 16 teams going direct to knockout, meaning from round of 16, you get beat, you go home. Cuba, after appearing in this tournament just miraculously like that, they managed to upset Romania, beating Romania and qualifying for the next round. And they did it in style because the first game ended in a 3-3 draw, and then because there were no penalties, it had to go for a replay on the next day, and Romania, being the superior of the two, decided to field players or rest them for the next round. Guess what? Cuba managed to beat them 2-1 and go to the next round. However, Cuba's fairy tale would end in the next round because they would be beaten 8-0 by Sweden in the quarterfinals. In another quarterfinal, Brazil faced Czechoslovakia in what people would call the Battle of Bordeaux, because this game featured fierce tackles, brawls and brutality that even the police had to intervene. Actually, this would mean that Brazil would qualify but would go into the semi-finals with changes in their squad due to injuries. Now, in the semi-finals of this tournament featured Italy playing Brazil and then Hungary playing Sweden, who had beaten Cuba. So Italy beat Brazil 2-1 and set up for a second successive final, becoming the first nation to reach a second successive final. Also, on the other hand, Hungary beat Sweden to reach their first ever final. Hungary beat Sweden 5-1. In the final, Italy actually managed to beat Hungary 4-2 in a 6-goal thriller, which meant that they became the first nation to ever defend the title, making their manager, Victoria Pozzo, be the one and only manager to defend the World Cup as well. Leonidas da Silva of Brazil, regardless of them being knocked out by Italy in the semi-finals, became the top scorer of this tournament, scoring 7 goals. Now, after the 1938 World Cup, FIFA decided that they will be alternating the hosts from South America and Europe so that to bring a fair hosting chance to most of the nations. Now, because we had the World War in between 1938, we will not have the World Cup again until 1950. And in 1950, we head all the way to Brazil in South America, who hosted the 4th edition of the World Cup. Now, going into the 1950 tournament, 3 teams withdrew from that World Cup for various reasons. India qualified for this tournament, but because they wanted to put their efforts more in the Olympics that were upcoming, they decided not to play in this tournament. However, some reports say that they were denied to play barefoot, and now it meant that we had only 13 teams to participate in this World Cup. So it changed the format of play a little bit. From the previous times when they went direct to knockouts, they decided to play group stages, and then they go to a round robin last group stage, which would again decide who will be the winner of this tournament. So this is what I meant. 13 teams were grouped into 4 teams, 3 teams and 2 teams, groups of 4, but different number of teams in those groups. And it meant the winners of these 4 groups, who will be 4 teams, will now play into another round robin group, meaning everyone will play everyone until we find the winner who will accumulate most points. Italy came into this World Cup as the last winners of this competition, but they were hit by a Torino disaster, which happened right before this tournament. So Italy lost some of their first team players, and they did not have a very strong team coming into this tournament. Now, Spain, Sweden, Uruguay and Brazil won their respective groups, which meant that the 4 will be put into a round robin group in which everyone would play everyone until they found a winner. Now, the first 4 games of this round robin group saw Brazil win against Sweden and Spain, while Uruguay slipped up and drew against Spain but won against Sweden. And now it set up a de facto final in which Brazil just needed to draw to actually win the World Cup for the first time ever. And Uruguay needed to win so that they become champions for the second time. In the de facto final, Brazil actually took the lead, but Uruguay had other ideas because they scored 2 goals and they beat Brazil in front of around 193 to 200,000 crowd supporting Brazil while at home, setting up one of the most upsets of a home team playing on home soil at the time. This de facto final between Uruguay and Brazil would later on be famously known as, or referred to as, the Maracanazo. While Ademir of Brazil became the top scorer of this tournament, it is Uruguay that managed to actually upset the hosts and win their second ever World Cup title, making them 2 each with Italy. From Brazil, let's head over back to Europe in Switzerland, 1954, a World Cup which featured so many goals that it was a frequency of 5 goals in every match. The format was a bit different from the previous edition because 16 teams grouped 4 teams into 4 groups, and top teams would actually go to the quarterfinals, semifinals, and the finals. In one of the group stage games, Hungary beat Germany 8 goals to 3. And as the tournament went on, in the quarterfinal, the hosts played Austria. And in this game, which up to today is the highest scoring World Cup game, magical things happened because the hosts were leading 3 goals to 0 against Austria, but an amazing comeback from Austria meant that the game ended 7-5. In terms of goal scoring, helped by Sando Kostis and Francis Puskas, Hungary managed to score a whopping 27 goals in this tournament, which is a feat that no other team has actually achieved in all of the World Cups. Now into the semifinals, Germany beat Austria 6 goals to 1, while Hungary beat Uruguay 4 goals to 2 to set up a rematch of a group stage where now Germany had to play Hungary in the final. Hungary were the favorites based on how many goals they were scoring. This final in Bern will be one of the greatest ever because it had everything a football fan would wanna see. End-to-end kind of football, chance after chance creation, goalkeeper after goalkeeper save, woodwork after woodwork, and in the end, amazing comeback from the German, even which had the commentator Herbert Zimmermann screaming live on radio for the Germans. In the end, with the aid of bigger studs, which helped them have a better grip from the floods they were playing in that day, Germany managed to overcome Hungary, who were the favorites, and win their first ever World Cup. And this will be famously regarded as the miracle of Bern. Let's not forget Sando Kostis, the Hungarian, who managed to score 11 goals and became the first ever player to score double-digit figures in a single World Cup edition. From Switzerland, let's head over to Sweden, still in Europe, in the 1958 World Cup. And this, of course, doesn't sit so well with other continents because they felt like Europe was being favored in as far as hosting the tournament was concerned. And so, FIFA had to document the rule that from there on, the World Cup host would move from continent to continent. So the format of this tournament was 16 teams, 4 teams grouped into 4 groups, 2 teams, top teams from every group would qualify to the next round. And in a certain group, of course, we saw Brazil vs England produce a result that had never been seen in a World Cup before. They went on to draw 0-0 in the group stage match. England in particular didn't do so well in this tournament because the Munich disaster that had happened a few months ago had claimed lives of a few youngsters like Duncan Edwards, who were promising coming into this tournament, and probably they would have done better. So in the end, they were eliminated from the group stage after failing to win their playoff match against Soviet Union, where they lost 1-0. The semi-finals of this 1958 World Cup were set. Sweden, who are the host, beat West Germany 3-1 to advance to the final, and on the other hand, Brazil managed to beat France 5-2, but an incident happened in this semi-final that you would feel for France because their captain Jacques collided with Vava, meaning that he was brutally injured with the game tied 1-1. So that meant he would play without a replacement because substitutes were actually not allowed at this point in game. So in the end, a hat-trick by Pelé meant that Brazil would go to the final and play the host Sweden. In the final, Pelé would score a brace, Vava would also score a brace, and Mario Zagallo would also score as well to give Brazil their first ever World Cup, beating Sweden 5-2. Mario Zagallo actually went on to make history in this World Cup because he would go on to be the first player to win the World Cup and then win it as a manager as well. Pelé also made history in this tournament because he scored in every knockout stage of this tournament. And at just 17 years old, this was actually an unbelievable performance. All said and done, we can't fail to mention that Just Fontaine became the top scorer of this tournament. And not just that, he scored a whopping 13 goals in this tournament, which up to today is the most by a player in a single edition of the World Cup. Aside from that, he became the second player to reach double-digit figures in a single edition of the World Cup. The 5-2 win by Brazil in the final against Sweden remains the most ever goals actually scored by anyone in a World Cup final. From Sweden, let's head over all the way to South America in Chile. And prior to this 7th edition of the World Cup, tragedy hit Chile, and it was a doubt if they were going to be able to host this tournament. However, Chile pulled themselves up from the earthquakes that happened, and they managed to be ready for the 1962 World Cup. The groups were set as usual, 4 groups of 4, and 2 teams would qualify to the next stage, which is the quarterfinals. In one of the group stage games, we saw Chile face Italy. Prior to this match, Italy had written a lot of negative things about Chile as the host of the World Cup, and this didn't go down so well with Chile. So this game turned into a brawl and a fight because Chilean players were targeting Italian players and Italian players were trying to retaliate. In the end, 2 Italian players were sent off, and one of who didn't want to leave the pitch until the police managed to intervene. In the end, this game was so brutal that it would be regarded as the Battle of Santiago. England made a step further in this tournament. Having been knocked out in the group stage in the previous tournament, they actually managed to go all the way to the quarterfinals, and they would play Brazil, and unfortunately, Brazil at the time were too good and they defeated England 3-1 to end their good run in the 1962 World Cup played in Chile. This set up semi-finals where we saw Czechoslovakia beat Yugoslavia 3-1, while Brazil, without Pelé because he was injured most of the games, managed to beat Chile 4-2 in a semi-final where the Chilean home crowd fell in love with the angel of bent knees by the name Garrincha. Garrincha had to step up in absence of Pelé and managed to drag Brazil all the way to the final. However, having scored 2 goals and being sent off in the semi-final, he was not supposed to play in the final. But guess what? Because the home crowd, alongside with the president of Chile, they wanted to see the angel of bent knees. And guess what? They signed a petition for Garrincha to appear in the final. In the end, he didn't manage to score in the final, but his performances helped Brazil because Brazil would beat Czechoslovakia 3-1, Vava appearing on the score sheet and winning their second ever World Cup. Actually, they will become the second team to defend the World Cup. And Vava will therefore become the first player to score in 2 consecutive World Cup finals. Until today, Garrincha remains with the most dribbles ever in a single edition of the World Cup. Now from Chile, South America, we head all the way to Europe, but this time in England, where history was made because it finally came home. Now, the format is still as usual, 4 teams, 4 groups, and 2 teams from every group will qualify to the quarterfinals. The defending champions faced an upset in this one because they will be knocked out in the group stage. North Korea made history in this one. They actually beat Italy, the 2 times champions at the time, and then it meant Italy were knocked out of the tournament in the group stage. So it meant that North Korea would go all the way to the quarterfinals, but they will meet who? Portugal. Portugal at the time had a good team because Eusebio was just on another level. However, North Korea started the game so well that they scored 3 goals, and then all of a sudden, a poker of goals from Eusebio staged a fantastic comeback, which made sure that North Korea were knocked out of the tournament, but proudly so, because they were the first team from Asia to be able to reach the quarterfinals. Soviet Union managed to pull through from group stage all the way to the quarterfinals and into the semis, a feat which they had never achieved before and a feat which they have never achieved after. However, they would play Germany in those semis and they will be beaten 2-1 to end a good run for the Soviet Union. In another semi-final, England beat Portugal 2-1 in a game where Eusebio scored for Portugal to add to his 8 to 9 in the tournament, which made him the top scorer and arguably the best player in that tournament. But it's Bobby Charlton's brace that sent England to the final, which they played Germany. Now, the final between England and Germany had everything, because end-to-end kind of game ended 2-2 in normal time, went to extra time, and it is at 101st minute that Geoff Hurst scored a goal, which up to today is a debate, because the ball seemed not to have crossed the line, but the referee, not being so sure, consulted the linesman and he pointed to the middle, meaning England led 3-2. In the end, Geoff Hurst added another goal to make it a hat-trick in that final, which means he is the first player to score a hat-trick in the World Cup final. This would give England the one and only World Cup title they have until today. And it is the BBC commentator Kenneth commentary at the time when Geoff Hurst was going to score the 4th goal that remains so popular in the history of World Cup.
And here comes Hurst. He's got some people are on the pitch. They think it's all over. It is now. It's 4.
Now, from England, let's head over all the way to North America, and this time in Mexico. This is the first time that North America is hosting the tournament, and actually prior to this tournament, Ken Aston, the English referee with his genius, came up with the yellow card and red card, because initially a player will just be sent off verbally. Now, the thing is, in this 1970 World Cup, no one saw a red card. Now, the group stage was set, and it featured 4 teams of 4, and 2 teams from each group will qualify to the quarterfinals. In a certain group, the 2 previous champions in Brazil and England were actually put in the same group. And this meant that we will probably have a final before the real final in the group stage. In this match, Brazil vs England, Gordon Banks pulled up a save that would actually be called the save of the century. An amazing save to deny Pelé from close range. However, England will still go down and lose 1-0, but this will not affect them because they will go on into the quarterfinals to face Germany. Now, this also set up another rematch of the 1966 final, which meant that it's gonna be a thriller. And it did, because prior to this match, something happened. England's best goalkeeper, who is Gordon Banks, was food poisoned, and up to today, it's still a mystery of how it happened. But he missed that match, and again, England went into that match, took a 2-goal lead, only for the German machines led by Beckenbauer completed a comeback in extra time, Gerd Müller scoring as well, to beat England in the quarterfinals and head into another fierce match in which they faced Italy. Italy versus Germany was a special semi-final because it will later on be called the match of the century. 1-1 in normal time, 4-3 in extra time. Amazing, unbelievable. This game had everything that a football fan would look in a football game. Intensity, tactics, tackles, great goals, end to end, legends of the game just fighting for a final spot. At some point in game, Beckenbauer broke his arm, but because Germany were out of substitutions at the time, Beckenbauer had to play with the broken right arm, just holding on to a sling. Gerd Müller also scored in this to make it 10 and become the top scorer of this edition of World Cup. But it wasn't just enough, because the Italian managed to edge them in a 7-goal thriller, and which set up a final. In another semi-final, Brazil played Uruguay, and in this one, actually, a lot of things happened. Uruguay scored first, Brazil made an amazing comeback, Pele created a goal, but it is at this moment where Pele beat the Uruguayan goalkeeper without touching the ball that left everyone speaking about this semi-final. Now, into the final, of course, Italy having played an extra time with Germany, that takes a toll on you, but it is what it is. It is Brazil who scored first, and then Italy scored, and then an end-to-end kind of game where, watching that game, you would think anyone would win it. And then came the 66th minute. Gerson scored for Brazil, Jairzinho added another in a few minutes, and Carlos Alberto, the then captain of Brazil, scored the 4th goal to put Italy to sword and give Brazil their 3rd World Cup in 4 editions, which meant that they retained the Jules Rimet trophy. Let's not forget that Jairzinho actually made history in this World Cup. He scored in every game from group stage all the way to the final, and this earned him the title, the Hurricane of the World Cup. And in the end, Mario Zagallo became the first person to win the World Cup, both as a player and as a manager. Now, from Mexico, we head all the way to Europe, and this time, Germany, who would host the 10th ever edition of the FIFA World Cup. Now, the greatness of Pele, Vava and Garrincha is now gone, and we're heading into the new greatness. England actually did not qualify for this tournament because they were eliminated by Poland in the qualifications. So this tournament still featured the 16 teams, but with a different playing format. 16 teams grouped into 4 groups of 4, and then 2 teams will qualify from every group, and then these 2 teams will be put into the second phase group of 4 each, and then, which means from the 2 groups, winner of every group will play in the final, and the second will play for 3rd playoffs. Zaire became the first sub-Saharan African country to qualify for the World Cup, and they were put in a group of Scotland, Yugoslavia, and Brazil. They didn't manage to score any goals. They actually lost all the games, and it is in the game against Brazil which actually cost a star in this tournament. Ilunga Mwepu, due to pressure, dashed and punted a free kick away before Brazil took it. To many Europeans, this seemed like ignorance to the rule of the game, but deep down, the then president of Zaire, Mobutu Sese Seko, had actually put pressure on the team since they had not performed so well in the first 2 games. Scotland, from the same group, also made history in this tournament because they were the only unbeaten team in the tournament, yet they were eliminated from the first round. West Germany played Poland in a crucial match in the second group phase, and they managed to beat Poland 1-0 to finish the group as number 1, and which means Netherlands on the other side beat Brazil courtesy of goals from Neskens and Cruyff to set up a final between Netherlands and Germany. Netherlands' total football, which they brought to this tournament, was not just enough for the final, because having managed to even lead the game through a penalty, they also managed to concede a penalty, and Gerd Müller managed to score his 4th goal in around 45th minute to win the game for Germany and win the Germany the 2nd ever title in 20 years since the miracle of Bern in 1954. The 4th goal scored in the final by Müller in this edition of the tournament added to his 10 in the previous, which meant he had 14 goals, surpassing Franz Just-Fontaine as the all-time leading scorer of the World Cup, doing it on home soil. In the 3rd place playoffs, Grzegorz Lato scored the only goal to beat Brazil and the only goal added his tally to 7, which meant that he became the top scorer of the tournament and also lifting his nation to the best ever finish in a World Cup edition. In the end, the previously broken arm of Beckenbauer became golden because he became the first captain or player to lift the new edition of the World Cup, which was designed by Silvio Gazzaniga, the famously Italian designer. From Germany, we head all the way back to South America, and this time, Argentina hosts the World Cup for the first time. The format of play is still the same, 16 teams grouped into 4 groups of 4 teams each, and then 2 teams who qualify will be put into 2 groups of 4, and then the winners of the 2 groups will play in the final, and the second place in the second group phase would actually play for 3rd and 4th position. African football continued to rise in this tournament because Tunisia made history for Africa. They became the first African team to win a World Cup match, staging that comeback versus Mexico and winning it in the first group phase. After the first stage of group phase, Netherlands in the second phase of the group stage faced Italy in a semi-de facto, and they defeated Italy to finish top of their group, and this meant that they would wait to play the number 1 of the other side of the second group. Brazil had actually played all their games in the second group phase and they were number 1 on the table. However, their fate was on Peru, who actually were playing Argentina. Now, it meant that if Argentina scored more than 3 goals or around 4 goals, then they would go top of Brazil in goal difference. And this match is still spoken until today because it seemed like the Peruvian goalkeeper, who was Argentine-born, looked to have let some goals in, meaning Argentina won 6 goals to nil and qualified as number 1 from this side of the group. So this set up a final between Argentina and Netherlands. On the other hand, Brazil had to play Italy in a 3rd placed playoffs. Now, in the final, Mario Kempes managed to score 2 goals to add to his 4 to make it 6 for the tournament, becoming the top scorer and also leading Argentina to their first ever World Cup, beating Netherlands, who lost another final yet again 3 goals to 1 after extra time. Brazil, on the other hand, beat Italy and finished this tournament unbeaten. And up to this day, it still pains most Brazilians, especially after watching their fate be decided by Peru, who just let in goals that cost them to play in the final. Their manager after this tournament would actually call his team the moral complete champion of 1978. Now, from Argentina, we head back to Europe, and this time Spain. And this is a whole new edition of the World Cup because it featured 24 teams. FIFA decided to expand the number of teams from 16 to 24 to give more teams a chance to participate in the most prestigious event. Now, the format of play for this tournament was actually a different one because 24 teams were placed in 6 groups of 4 teams, and then the 2 best teams in every group will then be placed in other groups, which means 4 groups of 3, and then the best team from the 4 groups will play the semis and then the final. Now, in the first group stage of the first phase, we saw Hungary make history in this one because they would go on and beat El Salvador 10 goals to 1, which up to today is the biggest winning margin of any team in any edition of the World Cup. In another, we saw controversy. West Germany and Austria, having already known the result of Algeria, they decided to play to their own advantage. West Germany scoring 1 goal and them kicking the ball without the intention of scoring, just to make sure they eliminate Algeria and qualify for the next round. This match would actually be called the disgrace of Gihon. In another, which featured Kuwait versus France, a whistle was blown from the fan section. Kuwait players had to stop thinking it is the referee. It meant that France would go on and score the goal. The referee actually allowed the goal to stand, but with protests from the Prince of Kuwait, the goal was then disallowed and the game had to continue. In the end, France still won 4-1. This victory would mean that France will go on to play in the second group phase, and then from the 3 teams, they will still manage to qualify, and they were the first semi-finalists. Germany, after the disgrace in Gihon, also managed to qualify from the second phase of the group stage and became the semi-finalists, and it meant that they would play France. Poland also managed to finish at the top of their second group phase, and they were our third semi-finalists. And Italy were the fourth semi-finalist, but their group was a tough one because they had to play Brazil, who were deemed the favorites of this tournament. Brazil just needed a draw to qualify for the semi-finals from that second group phase, but Italy had other ideas because the magic of Paolo Rossi scoring a hat-trick, answering to every equalizer that Brazil had scored, managed to land them a spot in the semi-finals, which meant that they will go on and play Poland. The game between Italy and Brazil in the second round was so intense that after Italy winning the game to make sure they qualify for the semis and eliminate Brazil, people called it the day football died because of the football that Brazil were actually playing at the time. Italy played Poland in the semi-finals. They beat Poland 2-0. In the other semi-final, Germany played France, but it is a moment that happened in this game that everyone still speaks about until today. Germany's goalkeeper, Schumacher, looked to have dived and knocked Battiston, France striker, out and actually unconscious. However, the referee didn't do anything. He didn't send off Schumacher. The game dragged all the way to extra time and to penalties. Germany won on penalties, which actually means that this is the first ever penalty shootout we ever saw in the World Cup. As West Germany went all the way to the final to play Italy, up to today, so many questions are asked why Schumacher was not sent off after knocking Battiston unconscious. In the final, Paolo Rossi gave Italy the lead against West Germany, but it is Tardelli's goal, which is half volley, and the way he celebrated that lives in people's memories. In the end, Italy added the third, and then West Germany scored a consolation goal, which didn't really help, but Italy went on to lift their third ever World Cup, matching Brazil. From Spain, let's head over back to North America, and we still land in Mexico. Second ever time Mexico are hosting the FIFA World Cup. This is actually following the fact that Colombia were not able to host the tournament. The format of this tournament will be a bit different because FIFA actually introduced another round, which meant that 24 teams were put in 6 groups, and then from there 12 groups that would qualify will be joined by other third best losers, which meant that they will form 16 teams, which will have an extra round of 16. And this will be the format that will be used until 2022 World Cup. So history was made in the group stage because Morocco became the first ever Arabian and African country to qualify from the group stage as number 1. However, they fell short to West Germany in the round of 16. The quarterfinal match played between England and Argentina in this edition of the tournament will have people speaking about it forever. England were on fire, but they met Maradona, who was on the queue to make history because in the first half, he scored the infamous hand of goal, and then a few minutes later, he will dribble past 5 English players to slot it home after also rounding the keeper in what we would call a goal of the century. England will then find a consolation goal by Gary Lineker, who will actually go on to be the top scorer of this tournament, but the hand of goal is the goal that everyone up to today will always remember. This set up some semi-finals. Argentina will play Belgium, winning 2-0. West Germany will play France and win 2-0 to set up a final, which is actually one of the best. In this final, Argentina took the lead, scoring 2 goals, but the heroics of the German machines scored 2 goals to tie it 2-2. Diego Maradona, having been man-marked by Lothar Matthäus around the whole game, made a difference in this game by making a pass, and Argentina scored the 3rd goal to win the second ever World Cup, and Maradona, because of his performances in this edition of the World Cup, would go down as one of the best in history. From Mexico, let's go back to Europe, and this time Italy, another chance for Italy to host the World Cup, and this is the 1990 14th edition of the World Cup. Prior to this tournament, a lot happened in the qualification stages. Roberto Rojas controversially cut himself with a blade he had carried in his gloves in the qualification match between them and Brazil when flares were thrown on the pitch to try and get Brazil disqualified for the 1990 World Cup. However, cameras all over, they caught him, and with his cheating, he was banned and never to play in the World Cup again. If this would not have been found out, it could have been the only time Brazil would actually miss the World Cup, because they have been into all editions of the World Cup. Now, in this tournament, African football continued developing in the name of Cameroon, who came into this tournament led by Roger Milla, who scored the only goal that beat the champions in the group stage. They would go on and be the first African team to qualify for the quarterfinals of the World Cup. However, they would fall short because they will be beaten by England in the quarterfinals. England reached the semi-finals, but they were beaten by Germany in penalties. And in another semi-final, Argentina played the host Italy, and they went on to defeat Italy on penalties. This is something that did not sit well with Italy, and they decided to support Germany in the final between Germany and Argentina, which is a repeat of 1986 final. During this final, Italy fans booed the Argentinian national anthem, something that did not sit well with Maradona as well. And he could be seen on cameras shouting "Hijos de putas," to actually mean sons of bitches. Now, the whole final was underwhelming, and it is in this final where we saw the first ever player to be sent off in a World Cup final. Pedro Monzon of Argentina was sent off, and then it meant that the only penalty that Germany got, they converted, and it led them to their third ever World Cup, matching Brazil and Italy. This victory by Germany meant that Beckenbauer became the second person to win the World Cup, both as a player and the manager. Also, he became the first person to win the World Cup both as a captain and a manager. The 1-0 win by West Germany over Argentina in this final was the first time that we saw both teams not scoring in a final, and it will set trends coming over in the next few finals. We cannot also fail to mention one man, Squillaci Salvatore, aka Toto, a man born in the poor streets of Palermo but made it to this World Cup as an optional striker. But when he came on as a substitute, he actually scored a goal, and then it changed everything because he would later on become the top scorer of this tournament, and not just that, he would also win the Golden Ball, becoming the second person to win both the Golden Boot and the Golden Ball in the single edition of the World Cup, following his colleague's footsteps, Paolo Rossi, who did it in 1982. Now, from Italy, let's head back to North America, and this time, the USA hosted the 15th edition of the World Cup. There were some rules that changed coming into this World Cup. One, including 3 points were awarded instead of the initial 2 for every win in the group stage, so that teams should be able to play for a win rather than for a draw. The back pass rule was also changed because initially a goalkeeper would catch a back pass, but this time they didn't allow the goalkeeper to catch a back pass, and that would be a foul. Also, this might not be a rule, but players were allowed to use their surnames on the jerseys. Now, this tournament carried a lot of history going into the group stage because Oleg Salenko became the first ever player to score 5 goals in a World Cup match. In the same match, Roger Milla of Cameroon, because Russia was playing Cameroon, also became the oldest scorer in any World Cup edition. In this edition of the World Cup, Bulgaria managed to scrap through the group stage, went through the round of 16, went through the quarterfinals, and they found themselves in the semi-finals, a feat which is the best their nation has ever achieved. However, they would play a good Italian side and they would lose 2-1. In the other semi-final, Brazil scrapped through Sweden, scoring a goal and knocking Sweden out to set up a final between Brazil and Italy, which is a repeat of the 1970. Argentina, having set the trend of not scoring in the World Cup final in 1990, was just a pathway for the other teams, because in this final between Italy and Brazil, halftime 0-0, full time 0-0, after extra time 0-0, and the game went to penalties. During the penalty shootout, Claudio Taffarel, the Brazilian legendary goalkeeper, became a hero because he saved a penalty, while on the other hand, Roberto Baggio missed the crucial penalty to hand Brazil their 4th ever World Cup. Roberto Baggio, having missed the penalty, stood for a few seconds in a posture which up to today is called the man who died standing. However, he is not the man who really died, because after this tournament, Andres Escobar died following the completion of this tournament, and he was shot by supposedly cartels who thought that he had very poor performances after he scored an own goal in a match which they had so much expectations for Colombia. Now, going into this tournament, many people thought that it was not going to be much a success because USA was not known as a footballing nation. But then the impact that this World Cup created in the USA, where so many people gathered actually to watch even the final, was so influential that it led to the developing of MLS, the league that we watch in the USA right now. From the USA, let's head back to France again. France hosted the 1998 World Cup. Now, there wasn't too much drama in the group stages, but in the round of 16 was where the drama began, because the golden goal rule actually came to effect in this tournament regardless of having been introduced in football in 1993. It wasn't used in 1994, but it came into effect in 1998 World Cup. So Laurent Blanc of France scored the first ever golden goal, knocking out Paraguay in the round of 16. This means that France would qualify for the quarterfinals, beat Italy in the quarterfinals, and then in another knockout match, England faced Argentina in a fierce round of 16 game. A game which was a thriller because 2-2 at the end of it, and it went all the way to the penalties. However, David Beckham was sent off for a retaliation kick on Diego Simeone. This actually led to so much backlash at home, many people blaming him for England getting knocked out, especially after the game had to go to extra time and penalties. The semi-finals were set and Brazil had started their golden generation 1994, was still rising. Ronaldo scored in the semi-final. Also, Patrick Kluivert scored the equalizer for Netherlands, which set up the penalties. And they managed to beat Netherlands in penalties and to qualify for the final. Davor Suker became the top scorer of this 1998 World Cup, and he scored against France in the semi-finals, only that France managed to come back and win against Croatia to set up a final between Brazil and France. And before the final game, Ronaldo suffered medical convulsions, meaning that he wasn't fit to play in the final. But controversially, Brazil named him in the starting lineup for the final, and guess what happened? He was a shadow of himself. Zinedine Zidane scored 2 goals in the first half and another added by Petit to help France to beat Brazil 3-0, which meant that France won their first ever World Cup. Even after falling short in the final, Brazil's Ronaldo managed to win the Golden Ball of the 1998 edition of the World Cup. Now, from France, we head all the way to Korea, Japan, and this is the first ever World Cup to be hosted in Asia. And of course, the first ever World Cup that will be hosted jointly by 2 countries. In the group stage, the champions, who are France, were eliminated, which led to one of the most upsets in recent times. The golden goal also came into effect in this tournament. There were 3 golden goals scored in this tournament. Henry Camara scored for Senegal to knock Sweden out of the tournament in the round of 16, and Jung Hwang also scored against Italy a golden goal header which knocked Italy out in the round of 16. Ilhan Manzis scored the third golden goal in this tournament and knocked Senegal out of this tournament. And that will be the last golden goal to ever be scored, because it will be abolished from the World Cup and football in general. In this tournament, South Korea made history as well, because they become the first Asian country to qualify for the semi-finals. But however, they qualified against Italy and Spain in the round of 16 and quarterfinals respectively are matches that have been spoken about over time, and of course due to controversy that happened in those matches. In the semi-finals, Germany beat South Korea by 1-0, and so did Brazil beat Turkey by 1-0 to set up a final between 4-time winners of the World Cup and the 3 times winners of the World Cup. In the end, Brazil managed to score 2 goals with the help of Ronaldo Nazário with his famous haircut, and he led Brazil to the 5th ever World Cup, which is up to today most by any nation. Ronaldo Nazário as well became the top scorer of this tournament, scoring a whopping 8 goals. But it is Oliver Kahn who was actually awarded with the Golden Ball, which means he was the best player after keeping a lot of clean sheets in this tournament. From Korea, Japan, we head back to Europe, and this time it is in Germany, where this will be the 18th edition of the World Cup, which was in 2006. This tournament made history because it features debuts of 2 of the greatest players to ever grace the game of football, in Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo, and they will go on to make history, as we will see it later. No much drama in the group stage, but this World Cup featured a brawling match between Portugal and Netherlands that led to 4 red cards and 16 yellow cards, a record that we have never seen before. This game was actually brutal, with very fierce tackles and players knocking each other in a game where, up to today, it is known as the Battle of Nuremberg. At some point in game, we could see Deco and Van Bronckhorst having a chat after being sent off from the same match. In the end, Portugal overcame Netherlands with a 1 goal, and they went on to face England in the quarterfinals. England also suffered the same fate of red card, in which Wayne Rooney stamped on Carvalho and was rightfully sent off. This also created a moment of uncomfortability between Rooney and Ronaldo, who were the then Manchester United stars. In the end, Portugal knocked out England through penalties, and they went to the semi-finals. In the semi-finals, Portugal fell to France through a penalty scored by Zidane. In the other semi-final, Italy, who were much more on fire, beat Germany 2-0 in extra time and set up one of the most dramatic finals ever. Miroslav Klose became the top scorer of this tournament, scoring 5 goals, but it wasn't just enough to take Germany to the final. During the final, Zidane managed to score a Panenka and put France ahead. Within a few minutes, Materazzi managed to equalize, and the game dragged all the way to extra time. It is in the extra time that something unusual actually happened. Materazzi looked to have insulted Zidane's sister, and Zidane did nothing but the rest. He headbutted Materazzi down to the ground. The funny part of this moment is that actually the referee didn't see it, and he went all the way to ask the linesman the incident that had happened. So Zidane ended up being sent off in this game, but still the game went all the way to penalties, in which Italy beat France on penalties to give Italy their 4th and last World Cup up to today. With Fabio Cannavaro's defensive heroics, he actually landed the nickname the Wall of Berlin. Zinedine Zidane was rewarded with the Golden Ball in this tournament after his heroics helped France overcome Brazil in the quarterfinals and also Portugal in the semi-finals. It was sad though to see his career end with a red card. And let's not forget, Ronaldo Nazario scored a few goals in this tournament, which actually brought him to 15 in total, and it made him the all-time top scorer in the World Cup, beating Gerd Müller's doing it on German soil. From Germany, let's head over all the way to South Africa in Africa, and this is the first time FIFA World Cup was hosted in Africa, the continent. This World Cup is famously known for its amazing soundtrack, and aside from the soundtrack, it also had something that players really complained about: the Jabulani ball, which was nicknamed the ball from hell. This ball was characterized to have unpredictable flight path, a sudden dip, and aerodynamic instabilities, which actually you could see it from some of the games. Into the group stage, the curtain raiser was of course between South Africa and Mexico, and Chabalala gave most Africans a moment that they will never forget. In a stadium full of vuvuzelas and noise, he actually scored a thunderbolt goal to give South Africa a lead, and the celebrations that followed were also incredible. France and Italy, who were the previous finalists, were all eliminated from the group stage. In a round of 16 match, England played Germany, and with the game poised at 2-1, Lampard looked to have equalized for England by hitting a shot that hit the crossbar, crossed the line, and back into play. But the referees actually didn't give it as a goal. So in the end, England lost to Germany, but this controversial moment is still being discussed up to today. Probably karma for the 1966 final match in which Geoff Hurst scored a ghost goal? Maybe, maybe not. In another quarterfinals match, Ghana were poised to be the first African team to qualify for the semis. But whatever happened in this quarterfinal was very bizarre. Luis Suarez handled the ball before it crossed the line. In the end, he was sent off, and Ghana were awarded a penalty. Asamoah Gyan, having had a very good tournament, hit the ball which hit the crossbar and out of play. Luis Suarez was pictured celebrating this moment. In the end, Uruguay won Ghana in penalties, went all the way to the semi-finals, and in the semi-finals they played Netherlands. Netherlands beat them 3-2, which set up a final between Spain and Netherlands, Spain who had beaten Germany by 1-0. The final was actually end-to-end, in that it was hard to predict who's gonna win. But Spain, with their golden generation, they managed to score a goal in extra time in almost the dying minutes of the match and give Spain a lead in a game where Arjen Robben had missed a golden opportunity to put Netherlands ahead in that game. Spain would go on to win their first ever World Cup. It is Thomas Muller was given the golden boot because he scored the same goals with Diego Forlan and Wesley Sneijder, but his 3 assists were a tiebreaker for him. Diego Forlan was rewarded with the best player of this tournament, and he earned himself the golden ball. From South Africa, let's head all the way to Rio in Brazil, and Brazil was given another chance to host yet another FIFA edition of the World Cup, which is the 20th edition. Now, going into this tournament, FIFA introduced the goal line technology. This was following the incident that happened in the round of 16 match in South Africa between England and Germany. Lampard had scored a goal that had crossed the line and it wasn't counted. This World Cup features a lot of drama, all from the group stage until the final. In the group stage, we saw Netherlands have a chance to revenge against Spain, and they actually beat Spain 5-1, a defeat which, together with other poor performances of Spain, made sure that the champions were eliminated in the group stage. In another group stage match, Luis Suarez was at the center of it again, but this time instead he beat Chiellini of Italy in a match between Uruguay and Italy. Referee, having not seen that incident, he actually didn't send off Suarez. But later on, after the game, Luis Suarez was handed a 9-match ban for international matches and 4 months away from football activities, which also affected him club-wise once club football began after the World Cup. Costa Rica, who were in the same group with Italy, Uruguay and England, managed to finish first, and they went all the way until the quarterfinals, their best ever as a nation. And in the quarterfinals, they played Netherlands, who knocked them out courtesy of penalties. In another match, missing the services of Luis Suarez, Uruguay fell in the hands of one star who took this World Cup by the storm. A youngster who actually scored a goal which will be the goal of the tournament, and not just that, a goal that will be the first ever World Cup goal to win a Puskás. This meant that Colombia will then qualify to the quarterfinals and play the host Brazil. They will end up losing to Brazil, but Rodriguez still appeared on the score sheet in a 2-1 loss to Brazil, which took his tally to 6 goals in this World Cup, making him the top scorer of this tournament. The semi-finals were set, and Netherlands played Argentina, a game which went 0-0 all the way to extra time, and Argentina overcame Netherlands in penalties. In the other semi-final, Brazil, the host, played Germany, and this is one of the games that any Brazilian fans would not want to remember. Having lost Neymar, their best player, in the quarterfinals against Colombia, Brazil came into this match not knowing that it would end up in a humiliation. The German machines managed to score 7 goals past Brazil, the host, which remains up to today the biggest upset to a host nation. And in this game, Miroslav Klose actually scored, and he brought his tally to 16 overall in as far as World Cup is concerned, which means that he broke Ronaldo Nazario's record of 15 goals on Brazilian soil. In the final, Argentina played Germany. 0-0 after halftime, 0-0 after full time, 0-0 after first extra time, but cometh the hour, cometh the man. Mario Götze, a super sub, managed to score the important goal for Germany, becoming the first ever substitute to win a World Cup final. Germany will then secure their 4th World Cup, matching Italy. In the end, Messi was awarded the Golden Ball, but it is this picture, him staring at the World Cup trophy, made rounds all over the internet as his search for the World Cup continued. From Brazil, let's go back to Europe, and Russia hosted the 21st edition of the World Cup. This tournament featured debutants in Panama and Iceland. Iceland becoming the smallest ever nation to ever qualify for a World Cup. Coming into this tournament, FIFA introduced VAR, the video assistant refereeing. And actually, following the VAR's introduction, there were a number of record-breaking penalties that were awarded in this tournament. Aside from penalties, it was pivotal in the group and knockout stages, sparking endless debates among players, managers and fans about its impact on the flow of the game. Into the group stage, the historic first review happened, which was in France vs Australia game. Andres Cunha, Uruguayan referee, initially waived a challenge by Australians Joshua on Anthony Griezmann. He was called onto the monitor and reversed his decision. He awarded a historic, highly debated penalty that set the tone for the rest of the tournament. In another incident, Spain scored a 91st minute equalizer against Morocco. The goal was initially ruled out on the pitch for offside, but a VAR overturned the linesman's decision and awarded the goal. Devastated by the elimination, Morocco midfielder Nordin Amrabat famously looked directly into the television camera and gestured, screaming that VAR was bullshit. Aside from the VAR drama, we also had other dramas. Just 2 days before Spain's opening match against Portugal, the Spanish FA fired the manager Julen Lopetegui because he secretly agreed to join Real Madrid after the tournament. This actually affected Spain's performance in this World Cup, and it would mean they will not have a so good campaign after this drama. Portugal played Spain, and it was a classic because full-time 3-3, but it is Ronaldo who grabbed the headlines because he scored a dramatic bending 88-minute free kick to secure a hat-trick and a point for Portugal. This hat-trick actually meant that Ronaldo will be the oldest player in the World Cup history to score a hat-trick at the time. In another group, we saw the first ever fair play elimination. Senegal and Japan finished completely tied on points, goal difference, and goals scored in a certain group. Senegal became the first team in the World Cup history to be eliminated strictly because they accumulated more yellow cards than Japan. Let's not forget, Italy had an upset because they will be eliminated from the group stage after 2 late goals scored by South Korea in their final group match game in this tournament. Into the knockouts, we witnessed one of the most electric games in the round of 16 in this tournament. Japan played Belgium. Belgium, who had come into this tournament with a golden generation squad featuring Kevin De Bruyne, Eden Hazard, Romelu Lukaku, Thibaut Courtois, and the rest of the squad. In this game, Japan took a 2-goal lead very early in the game. But in the second half, the golden generation of Belgium managed to overcome Japan and scored 3 goals. One of the goals being scored at the last kick of the game in an electric counter-attack which featured a ball that was crossed in, a beautiful dummy from Lukaku, and Nessa Chadli slotting it home. This meant that Belgium would go on into the quarterfinals. They would play Brazil. They will beat Brazil 2-1 in another fierce encounter, and then it will set up semis, which means they would play France. France at the time was so good because they managed to beat the golden generation of Belgium 1-0, and they were able to qualify for the final of the 2018 World Cup. In another semi-final, England played Croatia, and the heroics of Luka Modric staged a comeback which meant that they beat England 2-1 and also qualify for the final. Belgium would go on and beat England 2-0 in the third-place playoffs to finish third in this World Cup tournament and secure the best ever they had ever finished in a World Cup. Into the final, Mario Mandzukic scored an own goal which helped France take the lead in the 18th minute. 10 minutes later, Ivan Perisic scored the equalizer. 10 minutes later, yet again, Antoine Griezmann slotted home a penalty that gave France a 2-1 lead. And then, Paul Pogba's left foot strike gave France a 2-goal lead, leading the game 3-1. Kylian Mbappe also scored in this final because he added the 4th in around 65th minute. And Mario Mandzukic would also score a goal to reduce the deficit to 2, which meant the final ended 4-2. This meant that Mario Mandzukic became the second player to score a goal and an own goal in a World Cup game. Aside from that, he became the first player to score a goal and an own goal in a World Cup final. Kylian Mbappe's goal also meant that he made history in this tournament because he became the second ever teenager to score in a World Cup final since Pelé in 1958, now doing it 60 years later in 2018. This victory meant that France had secured their second ever World Cup title, and also, not just that, Didier Deschamps became the third person to win the World Cup both as a player and as a manager. Aside from that, he became the second person to win the World Cup both as a captain in 1998 and as a manager in 2018. Essam El Hadari, the Egyptian goalkeeper, became the oldest player to feature in a World Cup match. Luka Modric's heroics, which actually guided Croatia to the best ever finish as far as their nation is concerned, was awarded with the Golden Ball. While on the other hand, Harry Kane's 6 goals in the tournament made him the top scorer of the 2018 World Cup. From Russia, let's head over all the way to Middle East, where FIFA hosted their 22nd edition of World Cup, which is the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. Many people had doubts, but Qatar really pulled off an incredible job to prepare for this World Cup, from infrastructure to organization and everything. Now, there was last match day drama in a certain group which featured Spain, Costa Rica, Germany, and Japan. In the game between Japan and Spain, Japan looked to have scored from a ball which had already crossed the byline. But this goal was given, and it meant that Japan finished on top of the group, meaning Spain would finish second and Germany would finish third and would be eliminated in the group stage. This World Cup is historical because it is the most scoring World Cup with 171 goals. And Cristiano Ronaldo made history in this World Cup because he became the first ever player to score in 5 consecutive editions of the World Cup. However, it is the quarterfinal game between Netherlands and Argentina that was so much dramatic. Before the game, the then Netherlands manager Louis van Gaal actually made some comments that really made Argentina angry. And during the game, when Argentina scored the second goal, Messi was seen doing a celebration that was to invoke the Netherlands bench. In another incident, an Argentine player kicks the ball towards the Netherlands bench, and this revokes a brawl. However, when things are calm, Netherlands managed to stage a late comeback, but it wasn't just enough because Argentina managed to scrap through and win through penalties. After the game, Messi was so angry that he didn't want even to talk to any of the Netherlands players. And even after the match, the Netherlands coach, Louis van Gaal, was reported to have said that this tournament was fixed for Argentina to win. However, Argentina moved to the next round, and in the semi-finals, they played Croatia. In the other semi-final, Morocco, who actually had knocked out Portugal, managed to become the first African nation to play in the semi-finals. However, they meet a good side in France, in which they lost 2-0. And their good run came to an end, of course, because in the third place playoffs, they lost 2-1 against Croatia, who had lost 3-0 against Argentina. And it set up a final between Argentina and France. This, in all honesty, is one of the most spectacular finals you've ever seen. Together with the 1954 World Cup final and also 1986 World Cup final, this stands to be among the best World Cups we've ever seen. Argentina took the lead in the first half through a Lionel Messi penalty. And then, a few minutes later, Angel Di Maria scored a goal from a brilliant counter-attack to make it 2-0 for Argentina. And then the game dragged all the way until halftime. In the second half, there was a bit of a turnaround because, inspired by Kylian Mbappe, France managed to score 2 goals, and then they tied the game to 2-2, which meant the game had to go to extra time. In the extra time, Lionel Messi scored to make it 3-2 for Argentina, and then towards the end of the game, Kylian Mbappe completed his hat-trick and then sent the game to a shootout at 3-3. In the shootout, Emiliano Martinez, who in the game had saved a Colomwani shot that would have won France the game, became a hero again because he saved Kingsley Coman's penalty. And then Aurelien Tchouameni missed another penalty, which meant that Argentina will score all their penalties and win this World Cup, which meant that Argentina had 3 World Cups to their name, and Lionel Messi won his World Cup, completing football and perhaps putting the GOAT debate to bed. Kylian Mbappe became the second ever player after Geoff Hurst to score a hat-trick in a World Cup final. His hat-trick in the final meant he finished with 8 goals, which means he became the top scorer of this tournament. Messi, having guided his team to the 3rd World Cup, was rewarded with the Golden Ball. And this moment in game in which Emiliano Martinez saved Colomwani's shot will remain in the memories of everyone forever. Now, as we head into the 2026 World Cup, we expect a lot more because FIFA expanded the number of teams from 32 to 48, meaning we will have more than 100 games being played, which also means that the record for the most goals is gonna be broken, probably. There will also be new debutants in this World Cup. Curacao, Cape Verde, Uzbekistan, and Jordan will make it their first ever World Cup due to the expansion to 48 teams. Kylian Mbappe's total goals at the World Cup stands at 12, which means he has a chance to catch up with the best record, which is 16 goals by Miroslav Klose. Messi too has the same chance because he stands at 13 goals, which means that he is only 3 goals from matching Klose's record. Messi and Ronaldo are said to be the first players to actually appear in 6 World Cup tournaments. If you ask us who's the favorite for these 2026 World Cup, then it's gonna be a bone of contention because Spain have risen up in recent times, England too have risen, and Portugal, not forgetting France, who have a great squad depth coming into these, might all be favorites. Argentina too, because they have Messi, and maybe Brazil, because they have a new manager who actually knows how to win. In terms of probabilities, we will give it to France because they have the better squad depth. But it is so tough to predict who will be the outright winner of 2026 World Cup. And that was history of the World Cup from the beginning, 1930, all the way to 2026. Hit a like if you love this content. Comment from your favorite moment of the World Cup, and also don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Until the next one, my name is Werimo, representing GETin Sports, and adios.